How did one ruler transform two rival kingdoms into the world's first great civilization? How does a civilization begin? How does a scattered collection of communities, stretched along a single, life-giving river, become the world's first great empire? The answer, like the river itself, flows through a landscape of myth, mystery, monumental change. To understand the dawn of Egypt, we must first travel back in time to a period before the pharaohs, before the pyramids, to a moment when Egypt was not one land, but two. This is a story of division, of conflict, of a single ambitious vision that would unite a nation for 3,000 years. It is a story that begins and ends with the Nile. Long before the great stone monuments pierced the sky, the people of the Nile Valley and the Delta lived in separate worlds. To the south lay Upper Egypt, a long, narrow ribbon of fertile land hemmed in by harsh desert cliffs. Life here was tied to the rhythm of the river, its predictable floods nourishing the soil, its waters a highway for trade and travel. The people of Upper Egypt were hardy, their communities clustered tightly along the riverbanks. They were a people of the valley, their world defined by the high ground and the life-giving water that flowed from the heart of Africa. To the north, where the Nile fans out and surrenders to the Mediterranean Sea, lay Lower Egypt. This was a different world entirely, a vast, marshy delta of shifting channels, papyrus swamps, rich, black mud. Life here was abundant, the land so fertile it could support a much larger population. The people of the delta were outward-looking, their shores open to traders and influences from across the sea. They were a people of the wetlands and the coast, their culture shaped by the sprawling, intricate network of waterways that defined their home. For centuries, these two lands existed in a delicate balance of rivalry, codependence. They spoke a similar language, shared many gods, and traded goods up and down the great river. Yet, they remained distinct political entities, each with its own rulers, its own traditions, and its own powerful symbol of sovereignty. This division was a source of constant tension, a political fault line that ran the length of the Nile. The stage was set for conflict, but it was also set for an unprecedented act of unification, one that would require a leader of extraordinary will and vision. In this fractured world, power was not just demonstrated through armies and wealth, it was symbolized, worn for all to see. The rulers of the two Egypts each claimed their authority with a distinct and powerful emblem, a crown. These were not mere ornaments, but potent symbols of identity, lineage, and dominion over their respective lands. To wear one was to claim the loyalty of a people and the divine right to rule a kingdom. The story of Egypt's unification is, in many ways, the story of these two crowns and the man who would dare to wear them both. In the north, the king of the Delta marshes wore the deshret, the red crown. This was a more complex and mysterious shape, a flat-topped red cap with a high back and a long, curling protuberance, the kabet, spiraling out from its front. Its red color could have symbolized the rich, dark earth of the delta, or perhaps the papyrus reeds that grew in abundance. To wear the deshret was to claim mastery over the sprawling, fertile lowlands and the gateways to the wider Mediterranean world. This crown represented a different kind of power, one based on agricultural surplus and international trade. These two crowns, the white and the red, were mutually exclusive. They represented two different kings, two different governments, and two different ways of life. A man could not wear both. For a king of the south to appear in the north wearing the white crown was an act of aggression, a claim of conquest. For a king of the north to do the same in the south was an act of defiance. The crowns were the ultimate visual shorthand for the political division of Egypt. The chasm between the two lands was embodied in these two potent symbols, waiting for a force powerful enough to bridge the gap. Out of the southern lands, from the heart of Upper Egypt, a new power began to rise. At the turn of the 31st century BC, a leader emerged who would not just challenge the old order but shatter it forever. We know him by the name inscribed on the artifacts he left behind, Narmer. To later generations of Egyptians, he was remembered as Menes, the legendary founder of their nation. He steps onto the stage of history at a pivotal moment, a figure poised between legend and fact, a warrior king whose ambition was to erase the line that divided his world. Narmer hailed from the city of Hierakonpolis, City of the Falcon, a powerful center of worship for the god Horus. This was a strategic location, a burgeoning capital in Upper Egypt that had grown wealthy from trade and agriculture. It was from this power base that Narmer began to consolidate his control over the southern kingdom, likely through strategic alliances, political marriages, and brute military force. He was not just a local chieftain, he was an empire builder in the making, a man who saw the entire length of the Nile as his rightful domain. His gaze soon turned northward, toward the rich lands of the Delta. The motivations for his military campaign are lost to time, but we can surmise. Perhaps it was a desire for economic control over the Delta's agricultural wealth and its lucrative trade routes. Perhaps it was a preemptive strike against a growing northern threat. Or perhaps it was driven by a religious ideology, the belief that the followers of the southern god Horus were destined to rule over all of Egypt. Whatever the reason, Narmer gathered his armies and began a relentless march downriver. The campaign would have been a monumental undertaking, a logistical masterpiece of its time. Using the Nile as a superhighway, Narmer's forces moved swiftly by boat, striking at key delta cities and cutting off supply lines. The battles were likely fierce. The people of the delta would not have surrendered their independence easily. We can imagine clashes along the riverbanks, sieges of mud brick towns, and the clash of copper weapons and wooden shields. This was not just a war for territory, it was a war for the very soul of Egypt, a violent and chaotic struggle to determine whether the land would remain divided or be forged, in blood and fire, into one. How do we know any of this? How can we peer so far back into the mists of time and speak with such confidence about a king and his conquests? The answer lies not in a book, but in a single extraordinary object unearthed from the ruins of Hierakonpolis. It is called the Narmer Palette. Carved from a single piece of flat, greenish siltstone, one of the most important archaeological finds in history. It is not just a work of art, it is a declaration. It is political propaganda. It is the first truly historical document from ancient Egypt. On one side of the palette, a dramatic scene unfolds. The largest figure is Narmer. He wears the conical white crown of Upper Egypt. He raises a stone mace, poised to strike a kneeling captive he grips by the hair. Above them, the falcon god Horus holds a rope tied to a human-headed block of land from which papyrus reeds sprout, the symbol for Lower Egypt. The message is unmistakable. The southern king, protected by his god, has subjugated the north. Flip the palette over, the story continues. Narmer's triumph is complete. At the top, he rides in a victory parade, now wearing the red crown of Lower Egypt. He has not just defeated the north, he has claimed its authority for himself. He inspects a row of 10 decapitated enemies, their heads placed between their feet. Below them, 2 long-necked serpopards entwine their necks, often read as the forced unification of 2 lands brought into harmony. The Narmer Palette is our anchor in the story of unification. It provides a visual narrative that matches the archaeological record. It names the victor, Narmer. It shows the symbols of the 2 lands, the white crown and the red crown. It depicts conquest and the founding of a new, unified order. Some scholars see a symbolic single event, but the central message is undeniable. A stone-carved testament to the moment one king claimed 2 kingdoms. With the battles won and the northern lands subdued, Narmer faced a new and perhaps greater challenge: how to govern a newly united kingdom. He could not rule through force alone. To create a lasting peace, he needed to forge a new, shared identity for the peoples of the valley and the delta. He needed a symbol that would represent not conquest, but unity. Not the victory of one side over the other, but the creation of a single, indivisible nation. The solution was an act of pure symbolic genius, the creation of the Prashant, the double crown. The double crown was a physical merging of the two old symbols of power. It consisted of the red crown of Lower Egypt, fitted snugly inside the white crown of Upper Egypt. By wearing this new crown, Narmer and all the pharaohs who followed him were making a profound statement. They were not just a king of the south who had conquered the north, or a king of the north who had absorbed the south. They were the king of both, a single ruler for a single unified land. This new symbol was quickly adopted and became the preeminent emblem of pharaonic power for the next 3 millennia. It appeared everywhere, on temple walls, on statues, in tomb paintings. Every time a pharaoh was depicted wearing the Prashant, it reinforced the fundamental concept of a united Egypt. The crown became a constant reminder that, despite their different geographies and local traditions, the people of the Nile were one nation under one king. It transformed a symbol of division into the ultimate symbol of unity. The concept of duality became central to the Egyptian worldview, and the double crown was its ultimate expression. The pharaoh was the lord of the two lands. The kingdom was referred to as the two lands. This wasn't a denial of the differences between Upper and Lower Egypt, but an embrace of them within a larger, unified framework. The double crown showed that two distinct parts could be brought together to create a stronger, more complete whole. It was a powerful piece of ideology, a visual promise that the chaos of division was over, and an era of unified order, under the rule of a single divine king, had begun. Section 6. Memphis, a capital at the crossroads. A unified kingdom needs more than a unified crown. It needs a heart, a central nervous system from which the king's power can radiate. Narmer, or one of his immediate successors, understood this perfectly. Ruling the vast length of Egypt from a traditional southern capital like Hierakonpolis or a northern city in the Delta would be inefficient and politically fraught. A new capital was needed, one that was not associated with either of the old kingdoms. It needed to be a neutral ground, a place that belonged to all of Egypt. And so, the city of Memphis was born. The location chosen for this new capital was strategically brilliant. Memphis was founded right at the apex of the Nile Delta, the precise point where the narrow valley of Upper Egypt fans out into the broad, fertile plains of Lower Egypt. It was literally at the balance of the two lands. Sited on the west bank of the Nile, it controlled the main riverine artery and the overland trade routes that connected the north and south. From here, a king could dispatch troops, collect taxes, and communicate with both halves of his kingdom with relative ease. According to later traditions recorded by the Greek historian Herodotus, the founder King Menes, Narmer, performed a staggering feat of engineering to build his new city. He is said to have constructed a massive dike to divert the entire course of the Nile, creating a vast dry floodplain on which to build. While this is likely an exaggeration, it speaks to the monumental importance of the city's founding. Memphis was not a city that grew organically. It was a planned capital, a deliberate political creation designed to cement the unification of the two lands. For over 1,000 years, Memphis served as the political and administrative capital of Egypt. It was here that the royal court resided, where the bureaucracy of the state was centered, and where the nation's wealth was collected and redistributed. It became a sprawling metropolis of palaces, temples, workshops, and neighborhoods, home to the great temple of Ptah, the creator god. Its very existence was a constant physical testament to the success of Narmer's project. By creating a new center of power that belonged to neither the north nor the south, the early kings ensured that the focus of the nation was on its unified future, not its divided past. Section 7. The sinews of a state: taxation, law, and labor. Uniting a kingdom, building a capital, but to make an empire last for 3,000 years requires something more mundane, yet far more crucial: an effective system of government. A single ruler cannot manage a nation alone. Narmer and the pharaohs of the first dynasty began the slow, essential work of building the administrative machinery that would become the backbone of the Egyptian state. Creating systems for taxation, establishing a common rule of law, organizing the vast labor force needed for monumental construction projects. The lifeblood of this new state was grain. The government's primary function was to control the agricultural surplus of the Nile Valley. This led to the development of a sophisticated system of taxation. Scribes, among the most powerful members of the new bureaucracy, were dispatched across the land measure fields, estimate harvests, record the amount of grain due to the state granaries. This collected wealth did not just feed the royal court, paid the salaries of officials, funded the army, supported the artisans and laborers who worked on the king's projects. Alongside taxation came the need for law. To manage a complex society, disputes must be settled and contracts enforced according to a predictable set of rules. While a formal law code from this early period has not survived, tomb inscriptions and official records suggest the establishment of a legal system administered by the pharaoh's officials. The king was the ultimate source of law, seen as the upholder of Ma'at, the divine concept of order, truth, and justice. His officials acted as his representatives, ensuring that this order was maintained from the cataracts of the south to the shores of the delta. This centralized control over wealth and labor made possible the projects that would come to define ancient Egypt. The early kings did not build pyramids, but they laid the groundwork for them, constructing vast royal tombs, known as mastabas, at sites like Abydos and Saqqara. These projects required the mobilization of thousands of workers, quarrying stone, hauling materials, constructing these mansions of eternity. This was not slave labor, as is often imagined, but a form of national service, a labor tax paid by the populace during the months when the Nile's flood made farming impossible. It was a system that turned the rhythm of the river into the rhythm of nation building. Section 8. The Divine Current, Religion, and the Nile. The unification of Egypt was more than a political or military achievement. It was profoundly religious. The early pharaohs understood that to truly bind the two lands together, they needed a story, a divine mandate that justified their rule. They found it by weaving together the power of the king, the will of the gods, and the undeniable force that shaped every aspect of Egyptian life, the river Nile itself. This fusion of religion and geography created an ideology so powerful it would sustain the pharaonic system for millennia. The king was positioned not just as a political leader, but as a divine intermediary, the sole link between humanity and the gods. He was the living embodiment of the falcon god Horus, and upon death, he would become one with Osiris, the god of the underworld. This concept of divine kingship meant that loyalty to the pharaoh was loyalty to the gods and to the cosmic order of the universe. To rebel against the king was to invite chaos, to disrupt Ma'at. This powerful belief system provided a sacred justification for the centralized, absolute power of the monarch. The Nile played a central role in this cosmic drama. Its annual inundation, which deposited fertile silt upon the land, was not seen as a simple natural phenomenon. It was a divine gift, a yearly reenactment of the original creation of the world. The king, through his performance of religious rituals, was seen as responsible for ensuring the flood arrived on time and in the right measure. If the flood was good, the king was praised for maintaining Ma'at. If it failed, it was a sign of divine displeasure. This link gave the pharaoh immense power, making him the guarantor of life and prosperity itself. However, the historical record is not always clear, and we must consider alternative theories. Some archaeologists suggest that the unification was a much slower, more gradual process, driven less by a single great conqueror and more by centuries of cultural integration and economic integration. Perhaps trade and intermarriage slowly blurred the lines between North and South until political union was the natural next step. Another theory posits that several kings, not just Narmer, played a role in the conquest, and that Narmer was simply the one who completed the job and whose propaganda survived. Section 9. The Enduring Legacy. A civilization is born. The unification of Upper and Lower Egypt under a single king was the single most important event in ancient Egyptian history. It was the crucible in which the world's first great nation-state was forged. The impact of this singular achievement cannot be overstated. It created the political stability, economic prosperity, cultural unity. The dazzling achievements of the later dynasties all stand upon the foundation laid by Narmer and his successors in those early formative years. Without this unification, there would be no pyramids at Giza. The construction of such colossal monuments required the command of resources and manpower on a scale unimaginable in a land of competing petty kingdoms. It required a centralized government to organize the logistics, a national treasury to fund the work, and a unified religious ideology that compelled a population to participate in the construction of the king's stairway to the heavens. The pyramids are the ultimate symbol of the power that unification unleashed. The long and stable succession of pharaohs, the grand temples of Luxor, Karnak, the intricate hieroglyphic writing system, the sophisticated bureaucracy, all of it flows from this single source. The creation of a unified state allowed for long-term planning, the development of specialized crafts, and the patronage of art and architecture on a grand scale. It created a uniquely Egyptian identity, a shared culture that proved resilient enough to last for 3,000 years, absorbing foreign invaders and new ideas without ever losing its essential character.